Sagal here for TGI Sports Talk's Sunday stream of consciousness. How's everybody today? I got to make sure I'm on the right show here today. I mean, so much going on. We're back and better than ever on Wednesday nights in the college football huddle. We just got off the Mac and Jack show. I never know what show I'm on, for crying out loud. I'm starting to get schizophrenic. I'm all over the place. I hope I'm not over-proliferating the show. And I hope the feed is good today. I've been playing around again with the feed to make it better. I noticed Friday shows, there was a little stop action there, and I feel like I might be getting it here right now. I'm plugged directly into one of my mesh towers, so as long as the mesh holds up, we should hold up. So hopefully that will be the case. Excuse me. Welcome, everybody who will watch us today on, of course, TGI Sports Talk and Northeast Streaming Sports. Let's Talk Sports. You may see us later on down the road on Sideline Sports. And who knows where else you might catch us. So please like and share these shows as you watch them. It's not hard, guys. You can share every show I have to your feed. I'd love for you to do it. Every single guy who comes on here live or everybody that watches this, share the show. And then also go and like and follow TGI Sports Talk's page if you have not on Facebook and YouTube. Don't forget to ring the bell, as Dan Harris would say on YouTube. And we did bring back, as I mentioned, the college football huddle after a couple months, maybe 3 months. I can't really remember how long it's been. Time is a tough concept for me these days. We had a great reception to the college football huddle. Not a lot of people yet in the room. Summertime. We had a lot to talk about, actually. There was more to talk about than I thought. But the views afterwards from the groups have been tremendous. So thank you, guys. It's been well received from me. And the Major League Baseball update next week. We'll have our own Drew Ehrlich on to talk about the trade deadline coming up on August 1st and maybe recap some of our preseason picks. So we'll do a little something different on this Friday and maybe the following Friday as well to recap the trade deadline. We'll see what Drew's, multi-show contract calls for before we make commit to that. So today we'll get into a bunch of stuff. Major League Baseball, today's Hall of Fame Sunday. I got to tell you, I can't get excited. I'm sorry. I went through this when we had the elections. We'll talk more about it today. I'm not excited about Scott Rowland and Fred McGriff going to the Hall of Fame. I'm just not. It's becoming a Hall of Very Good. I made an argument, and I'll make it again today a little bit. If Scott Rowland's in a Hall of Fame, Greg Nettles needs to be in a Hall of Fame. He trails him like in batting average, the only place probably. And I know somebody will throw war at me or whatever, but I don't know. We'll look at some of their numbers. And don't throw gold gloves at me because Greg Nettles had to play against Brooke Robinson for half his career, just about. We'll talk about that. We'll get into some of the trade stuff. Ohtani spoke out yesterday. He's focused on a pennant race and blah, blah, blah. We'll see whether he's going to get traded. We'll talk about that. Aaron Judge getting closer to coming back. Trevino out for the year. Will the Yankees chase down Salvador Perez, who they just finished, or they will finish up a series playing against his Royals today? We'll get into the NFL. Their Hall of Fame game will be coming up and inductions. We'll take a little look at who some of those are. We'll look into the Jets and who are they playing in the Hall of Fame game? I forgot. They've opened up training camp, and the other teams will follow here shortly. Hopkins goes to the Titans. Maybe a little NBA news, maybe a little bit of college football. We'll see. Lane Kiffin is such a freaking hypocrite, right? I like Lane Kiffin a lot. I think we know from watching my shows. But for him to go in and talk about the disaster that college football is and what the NIL and then transfer portal has wrought, here's a guy who's used the transfer portal to his advantage more than anybody that I can think of. And maybe NIL, but he's also part of the problem with disasters. He's flirted with Auburn for a month last year, and his team went in the tank while it was happening. He left Tennessee high and dry years ago. Please, I like Lane Kiffin. I want you to do a good job. Just shut up. Let's see who's with us this morning so far. Welcome to everybody. CA's here. Have a blessed Sunday yourself. Guys, get to TGI Sports Talk's blah, 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 blah. NFL fantasy football page. We'll be looking for 4 more teams. We can go past that if we want. Those of you who've gotten in already, thank you. We did tweak some of the settings on the scoring, so take a look at that. Less defensive players, just 1 each at the positions, and shortened the bench a little bit. I thought there was too many bench players, and we added points per reception for wide receivers and a couple other things. Some interesting stuff with the kicking game in there. That's something different. I'm certainly willing to give it a go. Good afternoon, Alec, over in the UK. You're a little ahead of us. The British Open going on today. I may talk a little bit about that. Boy, my 5 players went down in flames, up in flames, I guess is a better term. Rory, tough day for Rory McIlroy yesterday. Played great tee to green. Couldn't make a putt. But been a lot of fun. And American Harmon leading that tournament last I saw. I'll have to bring up the leaderboard here a little bit. Good morning, Rick. Good to have you with us. Rick, sorry for the loss of your good friend here this past week, too. So I want to send along my condolences there. Have Alan start working on his feet. I don't know I still can't figure out what that deal is with the audio with Drew. I thought the headset would fix it, but it's got to be something. I don't know what it is. Good morning, Drew. Good morning, Drew. It's all cash, by the way. We don't all under the table. We don't want any IRS implications. Alan, good morning. Your Rangers still in first place. Not a good game yesterday. Dane Dunning got knocked around a little bit. But your Rangers still playing good baseball and possibly in the hunt. We'll get into this. We're going to talk about the Ohtani, and I don't know if you were with me. I don't think you were with me on the Major League Baseball update Friday, Alan. There's talk out there that the Rangers will be in play for at least a rental on Ohtani. But it's going to cost like 5 of their top 10 prospects. Are we willing to do that for a 2-month rental? Now, I realize you're getting 2 players in one. But are we willing to do that? And maybe, I don't think they'll be in play. Re-sign him. I think they might be in play to trade for him. Interesting, too, on the trade front. We'll talk a little more about that. The Mets and Justin Verlander. Now, the Giants are expressing some interest in Justin Verlander, who, by the way, we've been ripping. He hasn't pitched all that badly when you look at his numbers. Big news in fantasy football. Keith is destroying Rick and has enough of a lead finally not to blow it this week. Let's not jump the cart here. Put the horse before the cart. I guess I'm mixing my metaphors here. What do we got? 60-4. I still got a couple categories I could lose, but who knows? I'll probably end up 8-8 before it's over. Maybe we can make a move this week. Definitely get Scott in. Absolutely. I didn't think to send it to Scott. I sent it to Nick and Tanner. Tanner hasn't gotten in yet. Tanner said he was going to. Nick Botkins did get in. And guys, check out some of the other sports on shows on Let's Talk Sports. Some really good stuff going on there. If you haven't liked and followed the YouTube page or the Facebook page, please do that. Some great shows going on there. All about the Test cricket at the moment. I don't know what that's about, Alec. You could certainly fill me in, though. Drew continues to slide down the standings, saying consistency is not always a good thing. Listen, I'm very happy not to focus too much time on our fantasy baseball league here. I'm not happy with where I am, but the fact that I'm still, in my mind, especially if we finish up with a decent week this week, in striking distance of that 4th playoff spot, and Aaron Judge has missed 2 months. Well, not 2 months, but it'll be close to 2 months. It'll be 2 months before he comes back. And we have news about Aaron Judge hitting, and part of me wants Aaron Judge to sit. I don't want to risk another fallback here. I don't know. You are my kryptonite in fantasy. I'm nobody's kryptonite when it comes to fantasy baseball these days. There was a time I was better. Drew, I'm curious why you refuse to follow golf, Drew. As a golfer, I enjoy the game. I enjoy watching the game. I enjoy the majors. I don't enjoy well, you're probably because of the whole live situation, I'm guessing. I have a problem with that as well. The majors I will still watch, and there's certain players I will root for, like Rory McIlroy, because of his stance against the live, and the PGA threw him and Tiger right under the freaking bus. And I guess that was a stupid question of why. The majors, most of the majors are not affiliated. A lot of the majors are not affiliated. U.S. Open's not affiliated with the PGA. It's the USGA who has nothing to do with the PGA. This tournament has nothing to do with the PGA. My problems are with the PGA, not all the players. And there's certain players I will root against. Phil Mickelson is my favorite player of all time. I can't root for him anymore. I think I've been clear about that. So anyway, I still love the majors. Send me a link and I'll send it to him. I'll do that, Alan. There go all the Patriots. Alec, you'll love Test cricket. A game can last 5 days and finish in a draw. Well, that's kind of where Major League Baseball was before the pitch clock. Oh, some good stuff there. Let's jump right into Major League Baseball. I'm going to get into a couple of news items. I want to talk about, we'll get around the leagues a little bit. Talk about the trade deadline. We'll do more of that on the MLB update too. But I want to dive into the Hall of Fame today. Let me give you a couple of news items though. Rangers have put Corey Seager, who was a scratch, I believe, just before yesterday's game. He sprained his thumb. He's on the DL. Emphasis on D. With a sprained thumb. No word on how long he'll be out. Kershaw set to throw another bullpen session and possibly return soon after he had a setback. Sal Frelick's superb debut helps the Brewers beat the Braves yesterday. He went 3 for 3 yesterday, driving in the go-ahead run and made 2 outstanding catches in the Braves 4-3 victory yesterday over the Braves. The Braves slumping a little bit for the first time this year. So he's the 6th player over the past 25 seasons to have 3 hits and the winning RBI in his Major League debut. He was a 2021 first-round pick from Boston College. So good for him. Great debut. Speaking of the Rangers and injuries, Odalis Garcia left the game the other day with after getting hit on his right hand. We'll see what happens there. Listen, hand injuries, wrist injuries, bad news for players, especially this late in the season, because it is very hard to get healthy from that type of injury. Aaron Judge has suffered through that in past years. By the way, Garcia leading the American League with 80 RBIs. Cardinals' Wilson Contreras is day-to-day. Ohtani, and I'm going to talk about Ohtani now. Excuse me. Ohtani's focused on Angels playoff run. He's blocking out all talk about being traded. His future pretty much, I think, is totally in the hands of Artie Moreno. And where the Angels want to go in the future. Now, again, I've said on the show Friday, I've said on shows past, I told Alan last year when we're talking about Martin Perez at the time, certainly not even near the talent level of Ohtani. Ohtani's hitting the open market no matter what the Angels do right now. The Angels have to decide, is it worth keeping him and losing him for nothing, potentially, trade him for prospects, and still try to compete in this wild card race, which, again, with Trout out and some of the other pieces that are surrounding these two guys, I still don't know that this team is deep enough to make the playoffs, number one, and certainly good enough to go deep into the playoffs. If I'm any team that's going to have a player hitting the open market and I can't win I don't have a great chance. I mean, above 50% chance of winning at all, then I'm going to trade him, get some prospects, and then chase him into free agent market. I've lost nothing. I mean, if you're in first place, you got a great chance to be in the World Series, win a World Series. Different. Texas made a huge mistake in not trading Martin Perez last year. Huge. Every team that has this type of situation should be trading the guy and looking to bring him in or bring him back in free agency. Yankees did it with Chapman. It's happened a few times. What do we got? J-Rod and Ellie De La Cruz have suffered mammoth drop-offs since the All-Star game. Rodriguez was having a subpar year to begin with. He had a home run yesterday, I know, as I was watching the MLB. I got to tell you, watch on Saturdays when they have all the games going, which it's great to watch. There's 4 games on my screen. I'm sitting outside having a couple beers. The problem is they don't keep them in the same spot. I got 4 games going on, right? So picture 4 squares. But they keep moving around where they are on the screen. Leave them in the same place. Stream of consciousness. Listen, the league catches up with guys, too. De La Cruz is a great player. He's going to be a great player. You know, a little bit of a drop-off here from where he was. He was not going to sustain that. My God, his numbers were astronomical his first month. Nice start for Frelick, but Joey Weimer started the same way and is really playing now. I'm not saying there's any correlation to starting this way and having a Hall of Fame career. Just an FYI. Willie Mays was close to getting sent back to the minors when he came up in 1954. I think it was 54. And he ended up having a great year. John Gonzalez from the Sports Authorities. Guys, John's got a great site. If you do not follow the Sports Authorities, you need to go there. John has some great stuff. He posts some great nostalgic stuff, some funny stuff. John does a great job, and he's a great friend of the show, and he allows me to share a lot of stuff over there as well. And John, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you popping in the show today. And you can certainly give us any of your thoughts on Ohtani being traded. Again, I say the Angels need to trade him and then go negotiate with him in free agency. You can also give me your thoughts on the Hall of Fame inductees today, by the way, which we're going to get to in a few minutes. I do not think Scott Rowland, nice player. Fred McGriff, nice player. I don't think either one of them belong in the Hall of Fame. Austin Riley hits homers in his 5th straight game, finally waking up after 3 months of mediocrity. By the way, it speaks to how good the Braves are and how deep the Braves are that they've been able to withstand 3 months of mediocrity from Austin Riley, who's one of their key pieces, and also some of their key pitchers, as we've talked about, and Fried and Wright. And now they got injuries to their bullpen. Now they're struggling a bit now. What's the record? I believe Don Mattingly tied the record for 8 straight games with a home run in the 80s. Dale Long, who some of you who have been in this area your entire life may remember that Dale Long was a weekend sports anchor here, I think, on Channel 10 back in the 70s. Some of you may remember that. But Dale Long, I believe, had the record for 8, and I think Don Mattingly tied it in the 80s. John Gonzalez says Moreno isn't trading Ohtani, the Babe Ruth of his era. I'm not saying he shouldn't try to keep him, John, but you could hedge your bets. Why not hedge your bets? This is what I'm talking about. You trade Ohtani now, you get some prospects, he's hitting the open market anyway. You have nothing to lose except maybe this season. Do we really think that the Angels are competing for a championship this year? I don't. So I could trade Ohtani, get a boatload of, let's just say the Rangers want to do something stupid like trading 5 of their top prospects, as we've talked about. Or the Giants. Don't count the Giants out of this. And then you can still negotiate with him just like if he was finishing the season with you. There's nothing to lose by trading him now. Now, if you decide you're not going to chase him, that's a different story. So, me, it's just smart. There's nothing to lose. Boone's on his way out. Oh, Cashman better go with him, John, is all I can say. The mess of the roster is put together by Cashman. Cashman's the guy who keeps putting inconsistent guys on this roster, giving a crazy amount of money to Stanton, who's hurt or slumping, half the time. Then he has a couple of good games. We all get excited. He's back. And he'll string together 4 or 5 good games and then go to sleep for a month. And at the end of the year, he's got decent numbers, but he's contributed to a 25%, successfully 25% of the season due to non-productivity, and absence. And we give Josh Donaldson crazy money. Josh Donaldson's career is over with the Yankees, by the way. They moved him to the 60-day DL, and I think as soon as he can come back is September 11th or 15th, and he'll have to have a minor league rehab. He's not playing with the Yankees ever again, in my mind. He could come back and be part of the roster, I guess, in late September. But I will say right now, I doubt he would be on the postseason roster. Mattingly did it in 1987. Remember it very well. I remember the night he hit his 8th. I was actually in a bar. Shocking. In Syracuse. We'd gone up for a senior golf tournament there, the Money, I think, tournament, which was a lot of fun. And Jim Boeheim was following us around all day long, or vice versa. I don't remember which, but Jim Boeheim followed us around all day. So we were out eating dinner and having a few drinks and saw Don Mattingly hit that 8 straight. Pitching is not the Yankees' issue. By the way, where are they in starter ERA? Rendon's I'm not expecting much from Rondon. I need Cortez back. Here's my starters right now. Cole, fine. Great pitcher. Severino, what's his ERA? Clark Schmidt's pitched much better. I like Clark Schmidt a lot. I want him in this rotation. Yankees do not need bullpen help. Yankees bullpen has been very good, which has driven that ERA down, by the way. But to your point, their hitting makes them 29th in average, and their on base percentage is horrendous. Last time I looked, it was 300. You can't win with a 300 on base percentage. So yeah, and it points to the problem that the Yankees have too many holes to fill. They have starting pitching holes that have to be filled. Somebody, either Nestor's got to get back and get healthy. Severino's got to round back into form. Rondon's got to continue to pitch well and stop flipping off fans. If that happened in New York, his career in New York would be done. They'd be putting his nails in his driveway like they did for Eddie Whitson. I said Rondon was a bad signing for lots of reasons. Injuries, which has already proved out. I didn't think his makeup was good for New York, which is proving out. He flipped off the fans on the road. Again, if he'd done this in New York, he'd be Eddie Lee Whitson. So, yes, the Yankees hitting. They need hitting. They need a third baseman. Look, here's if I'm the Yankees, I try to get in a wild card, but I also try to get younger. I let Peraza keep playing. He's played pretty well. Volpe, what a great play Volpe made to end the game Friday night. Heads up play, great play going to third base when he had no shot to get the guy at third or first. Great heads up play from not even his knees. I love Volpe's makeup. Let Peraza play more. DJ's starting to round into form. Maybe DJ gets traded. I'm not trading any prospects for a left fielder that's going to stink for 2 months. or is going to walk out of here in 2 months. I'm not trading prospects for Nolan Arenado. I'm not doing it. None of these guys are getting traded. Yankees are out of the Ohtani stakes because the first names that are going to come up are going to be Peraza and Dominguez. They probably wouldn't. They'd probably ask for Volpe. I'm not trading any of those guys for a 2-month rental. He doesn't want to play on the East Coast. Same with the Mets because Alvarez is the first guy that will come up. I'm not trading him. Hang on, Drew. Teams should tell potential free agents that they want them back next year and then get what they can for them now. Again, that's basically what I mean. You can tell the guys anything you want on the way out. And it's happened a handful of times. Teams have been smart enough to do this. I just cannot believe it's not more of done more. Ohtani is the perfect test case for this. And Boone, by the way, I didn't touch on this. Hal will dump Boone isn't getting rid of Cash. No, you know why? Because Cashman does have pictures of family in compromising positions. What has Cashman done? What has Cashman done to keep his job? 2009 was 14 years ago. 14. They haven't been back to the World Series. 14 years. Am I a spoiled Yankee fan? I am. You probably are too, John. It's not good enough. Royals have been there twice since then and won one. Going back to 2003, got the same number of World Championships as the Marlins. Boone does need to go. Boone is a reflection of Cashman. He's a pup marionette. No feel for the game. Living on analytics, doing paying attention to the analytics that Cashman tells him to pay attention to. We got a script that we got to follow. And like most of the managers in baseball, no feel for the game that they're watching. Orioles-Rays series has been fun. I agree. I watched, that was one of the games that I was getting dizzy trying to follow around the screen yesterday on MLB Network. MLB Strike Zone, I believe. Which is a really cool concept. Just leave the games in one place. But yes, it has been a fun series and an important series as well. I love the fight in both these teams. Donaldson trade was a huge bust. One good thing came of it, and that's getting rid of Gary Sanchez. They gained nothing. Donaldson is all done, John. All done. Good morning, Anthony. Good to have you. I see Anthony, I believe, jumped in the Fantasy Football League. Thank you for doing that, Anthony. Good to have you in there. We'll have some fun with that. Good to have you with us today. Mets should clean house. Verlander, Quintana, Conrad, Vogelback, Scherzer. They could, John. They're not going to move Verlander. The problem with Verlander and Scherzer is I'm not sure how they move them without eating a bunch of money. And if you're going to eat the money, maybe you ought to just keep them. I don't know. Are they standing in somebody's way? Quintana's only had one start, right? But again, I wasn't a big fan of his when they signed him. He's been a bad. He's a decent player, right? He's not he's a difference maker in the sense that he's a great filler for a really good team. But this team needs more offense than he can provide. I wouldn't leave out McNeil. McNeil's been a bust on his team. McNeil won a batting title last year. McNeil doesn't play good enough defense or have enough power to be able to hit 250 and help this team. He's got to be hitting 310 with a 375 to 390 on base percentage to help this team. And I think you left out a couple of guys. Probably their most marketable guy is Tommy Pham, who got hurt. Don't know if he went on the DL or not, but Tommy Pham's maybe their most marketable guy. I think they want to get rid of Marte, but he's hurt again. Mets will probably trade I think they'll be sellers. And by the way, Verlander, as I think I said earlier, the Giants now have come up as a major contender to get Verlander, or they want him anyway. How's the feed? Because I feel like I'm stuttering here on my side of the feed, but I can't always tell from that. I know Friday, somebody on YouTube told me it was fine. I watched it on Facebook later on, and I would get a little spot where I would stop for a second. I don't want to be like Max Headroom here. Yankees should target. No. John, how? Tell me who you're going to trade for Arenado. I'm not giving up one of the kids. Arenado's a nice player. I got to take on another big contract on the backside of his career. He's having a nice year, but he's not the player that he was. I'm not giving up Peraza. I'm not giving up Dominguez. And at least one of those guys is coming up in that conversation. I got to believe. And is it really going to make a difference to the Yankees? Another right-handed power hitter, by the way. We need left-handed hitters. The team's we got no left-handed power right now with Rizzo going, 50 games or whatever it is without a home run. Team's got to get right-handed or left-handed. More left-handed. We need some left-handed power. Actually, it's a 70-point differential between average and on-base percentage is pretty good. 229 versus 300. It doesn't matter. It's still 300 on-base percentage. I get that. I get what you're saying, Drew. The 70-point differential is fine. But I'm still getting on base 30% of the time. That's not good enough. So, yes, again, it all plays together. I get it. But, whether the average drives it down or the walks drive it down, it really doesn't matter to me. It's still 300. But I get your point. I have thought Bellinger could be a Yankee at the trade deadline. Assuming he comes cheap, he's got a 1-year contract, so there's a 2-month rental. There's no issue there. He shouldn't cost a lot. You're not talking about giving up. You shouldn't be talking about anything more than giving up, a mid-level minor leaguer or two. And should be a pretty good, again, a lefty in Yankee Stadium, a good defensive outfielder, which they need. I'm okay with Bellinger. I'm okay with Bellinger or Ian Happ coming over here from Chicago. I like Ian Happ a lot. I thought they would chase him last year at the deadline, and they didn't do that. Mets, I think you mean the Mets, will trade veterans, but not Scherzlander. You're lucky you'd be better off maybe if they were one pitcher. Listen, Verlander's numbers are not bad. Scherzer has looked like he was rounding into form. He didn't pitch well yesterday. But he pitched some pretty good games leading up to that. So, listen, these are still valuable pitchers. If the Mets really think that they can contend this year, if they think that they can slide into the playoffs and get hot and have a chance to win it all, because everything will start to mesh, then you shouldn't trade either one of them. Because if they were to round into form, nobody's going to have a better 1-2 starting staff if these guys pitch anywhere close to their norm. They don't have to be what they were at their peak. Verlander hasn't been bad. He's got a 3.41 ERA. His walk to strikeout ratio's in the high 2s. John, what do you got? Mets getting a lot of calls on Quintana Cana and heading to Seattle. Seattle needs some bats, so Cana would be a pretty good fit there. there's some teams that are going to fit together well. The Cardinals are going to fit together well with the Orioles because the Cardinals are definitely trading starting pitching. Flaherty, Montgomery, all getting traded. Maybe Soraka. So they match up well with the Dodgers. They match up well with Baltimore. And they probably match up well with everybody because everybody needs starting pitching. So Cole seems to throw to like throwing to Rolt was a guy they got in that Donaldson trade with Minnesota, and they really got nothing out of him. Actually, they probably got more out of him than they have Donaldson. So losing Trevino may not be a big deal, assuming I can't even say his name. Roltvet doesn't get hurt again. Again, then that's a major issue. He's been hurt a lot since they traded for him. But again, this is the Yankees. They're going to think, you just said they need a bat. He doesn't have a big bat that I'm aware of or the potential of that. So if Perez wants to get traded, and he probably will not leave the Royals unless he wants to go to get with a contender because he's very popular there. He played his whole career there. His age worries me a little bit. His offense is not what it was. And again, he's a right-handed hitter. I need some left-handed power in this lineup, and I don't need Joey Gallo, by the way. Brian Cashman. I saw this trade. What do I think about this? The Orioles trade for Giolito. Giolito's definitely going to get traded. He's going to be one of the better starting pitchers on the market. Problem is, there's so many teams looking for pitching that the price is going to be high for these guys, right? I mean, I think if I take Ohtani out right now, Giolito might be the best starting pitcher available. And he's had a couple of down years before this, but he was a Cy Young contender before that, don't forget. So would he fit the Orioles? Absolutely. I think they need two starters. Giolito would be a good start. Severino's heading to Cincinnati. I'd love to know. I haven't seen that rumor for prospects. Again, I wouldn't have a problem with this trade. I really wouldn't. Sevy, I love. He's never going to live up to his potential. Injuries have derailed his career. And you see flashes of that brilliance that you knew was there, actually. But Severino's one of those guys that I just don't think is ever going to be all he can be here. And the Yankees have got to get out of this mode of not trading guys because they're worried what they'll do somewhere else. That's been their MO. That's part of the problem with this roster. They sat on Gary Sanchez for 2 years at least, maybe 3, longer than they should have, because they were afraid he would blossom somewhere else. Who cares? He's not getting it done here, and he's not going to. I have this argument with Jack Hirsch on Jack and Jack all the time about Aaron Hicks going to Baltimore and playing well. I don't care. I don't care if he hits 40 home runs. He didn't do it with the Yankees. There's my internet connection. Jesus. That's ticking me off. Spectrum, you are getting a call from me tomorrow, and we are going to go round and around. So I wouldn't have a problem with if I can get a decent prospect for Severino. I don't think I'd have a problem with that. I should have put up a banner. I didn't do any cool banners. We're just talking MLB news and notes, right? We continue talking about that. One thing I do want to talk about before we get into this, I want your guys' opinions on Scott Rowland specifically and Fred McGriff going into the Hall of Fame today. Is this warranted? Is Scott Rowland really a Hall of Fame player? Scott Rowland hit 316 home runs, had 1,200 RBIs, a 281 base batting average. Did have an 855 OPS, so we like that number. He was an all-star how many times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times an all-star. Finished in the top 20 of the MVP voting twice. As high as 4th in 2004. He won a Gold Glove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. But is he a Hall of Famer? Was he ever the best at his position? And if he belongs in a Hall of Fame, shouldn't I be looking at Greg Nettles? Nettles was in 6 All-Star games. Nettles finished in the top 20 in MVP voting 3 times, and a top 10 twice, 5th in 77 and 6th in 78. He won Gold Gloves. He only won 2 because he was playing against some great players. Brooks Robinson early in his career. Buddy Bell. Some really good third basemen in his era. 390 home runs, 1,300 RBIs, all match up very, very well with Rowland. His batting average holds him down, obviously, and the OPS because his batting average and his on-base percentage are lower than Rowland's. But I'm going to make an argument that if Scott Rowland is in the Hall of Fame, then Greg Nettles belongs in the Hall of Fame. And if Fred McGriff is in the Hall of Fame, I can make an argument for a bunch of other guys. I don't like what the Hall of Fame is doing. I believe McGriff got in on the veterans vote, right? And we're going to look at the NFL Hall of Fame later. Listen, Gil Hodges was a great player. A good player. I shouldn't say that. I'll say he's a great player. He's not a Hall of Fame player. If he belongs in the Hall of Fame, so is Don Mattingly. Great person, great manager with the Mets. But we're starting to get to be a Hall of Very Good, and we don't need to elect guys. Baseball's always been very good about not just electing guys who elect guys. Scott Rowland had a very, very nice career. I don't know that I ever felt like, he was a dominant player, that when Scott Rowland came up, I had to get to the plate. I know he's a great fielder. I don't remember him having a night like Greg Nettles, who turned around an entire World Series in 1978. Turned around a World Series by himself on defense. If you don't remember, Game 3, Yankees were down 2-0. Ron Guidry was getting rocked. They were down 2-0. Game 3, Ron Guidry, their ace on the mound, won 25 games that year. Getting rocked. Walking guys, control not good. The guy's hitting just shots everywhere. Nettles saved 5 runs that night at a minimum. You will never see, I don't care if you're Brooks Robinson, who's a great player, or somebody else, you're never going to see that type of performance again. All right, let's see. I missed some stuff here, so let me see where I left off. Severino, here we go. I know I miss Andy Hawkins. Andy Hawkins pitched a no-hitter and lost 4-0. He's got that going for him, John. That's a great one. Andy Hawkins. Drew. Roland, no. Thank you. I get one agreement. I get argued on this all the time. McGriff, I'm still not sold on McGriff. Let me look at McGriff's numbers quick. I didn't pull them up before. Let me just pull him up here. I mean, I want to see who he compares with. That's why I love the baseball reference. Great guy. Great player. Hall of Fame worthy. Well, I guess if Harold Baines is and Fred McGriff is, but that isn't the argument I want to put up there. 493 home runs, 1,500 RBIs, 284, 886. Top 10 in the MVP. Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe I'm selling Fred McGriff short. See if they have some player comparisons here like they normally do. Similar batters. Willie McCovey in the Hall of Fame. Willie Stargell in the Hall of Fame. Paul Konerko. No. Bagwell, we know why he's not in the Hall of Fame. David Ortiz. Again, if David Ortiz is in the Hall of Fame, Jeff Bagwell has to be in the Hall of Fame. No. Frank Thomas, Hall of Famer. Carlos Delgado, not a Hall of Famer. See, Delgado seems to be a very good comparison to me for Fred McGriff. Hall of very good. Jason Giambi, another good comparison. Billy Williams, Gary Sheffield. I don't think, Roland was a really good defensive player. I don't think he was nearly as good as Ozzie was at shortstop. Again, he was not better than Nettles. He was not better than Nettles. And I'm not saying, to go with Drew's next comment here, I'm not saying great defensive players should, if that was their forte, like Ozzie, it's in the Hall of Fame. Bill Mazeroski is in the Hall of Fame. Luis Aparicio, I believe Luis Aparicio is in the Hall of Fame. Great defensive player. Not saying they aren't great at what they do, but I don't think Roland, he didn't turn my head. I mean, again, he's a great player. And maybe he just didn't have that night that I saw. And maybe I'm biased because I love Greg Nettles. But I can't have a Hall of Fame with Scott Rowlands in it and Greg Nettles isn't. I just can't. Roland isn't a Hall of Famer. Nettles is way better than Roland. Way better is probably maybe too strong, John. I wouldn't say he's way better. He's at least as good, and I think he is a better defensive player. I really do. Again, Nettles doesn't have all the gold gloves because there were other great third basemen that were competing with him at the time. I defy anybody to go back and watch Game 3 of the 1978 World Series and tell me that they ever saw a defensive player. You could give me Brooks Robinson anytime you want, and I'll say nobody ever affected a game the way Greg Nettles affected, and a World Series, by the way, because the Yankees were reeling. Nobody ever affected a World Series the way Greg Nettles did on defense. We'll get to some other stuff. We're going to talk some NFL in a little bit, John. John DeLon, welcome to the show, by the way. It's MLB season, so MLB does tend to, and the NFL now will, tends to dominate the Sunday stream of consciousness show. We'll get into some other stuff. The college football huddle is back on Wednesday nights, though, John, so you can get your fill of SEC talk on Wednesdays for sure. But if you want to talk about something, throw it out there. We'll talk about it. It is the stream of consciousness off. Same with football. How is Klecko in and Marshall's not in? I don't disagree with that. I mean, the problem is, they both get in. A lot of guys get in because of longevity in their compilers, right? And Marshall also has the added issue of having been overshadowed by at least two of his line mates in Alan Page and Carl Eller. So that's a good point. And he'll get a chance again this year. We'll look at the Hall of Fame, NFL Hall of Fame class in just a bit too. Rusty Staub. There's a great name. Let's look at Rusty's numbers, shall we? Sorry, Fred. Oh, let me just compare him to Fred McGriff. Hold on. I loved Rusty, man. Old school. Rusty. I don't know, John. 292 home runs. Probably hurts him. I don't know that it should. It will today because we're a home run driven game. 1,466 RBIs, though. 279, 793 OPS. He was an all-star 6 times as well. MVPs, nothing really high, unfortunately. 5 and 78 with Detroit. One of his best years. Rusty was a good, solid player. But I'm going to go the same way with Rusty as I go with McGriff. No. Hall of very, very good. And maybe Nettles belongs there. I don't know. All I'm saying about Nettles is if Roland's in, Nettles is in. Harold Baines is not a Hall of Famer. Agreed. He's in the Hall of Fame. I hope you're not saying he isn't in the Hall of Fame. He should not be a Hall of Famer. But this is what's happening. I don't think Gil Hodges. I'm sorry. I'm probably offending a whole generation of baseball fans that are just a bit older than me and remember the Dodgers being in Brooklyn. But Gil Hodges is not a Hall of Famer. Very steady, good ball player. Great manager. Not a Hall of Famer. We got players like Clemens who should be in the Hall of Fame. Well, now the problem becomes the steroid guys, the Pete Rose guys. What do you do with them? I've always said you put them in, warts and all. Roger Clemens is a Hall of Fame pitcher. Barry Bonds is a Hall of Fame ball player. He's a Hall of Famer before he started doing steroids. You can't have a Hall of Fame without these 3 guys. And Jeff Bagwell falls in there, Rafael Palmeiro. So if you're going to put Junior Ortiz, who's Junior Ortiz? I know that name. I don't know why. If David Ortiz is going to be in the Hall of Fame with his tainted reputation, why are these guys not in? Put it on their plaque. Put Pete Rose in. Put it on his plaque. Pete Rose is all over the Hall of Fame. Just doesn't have a plaque. Put it on their plaque what they did. They did steroids. They cheated the game. They bet on baseball. Were suspended for life. Shoeless Joe Jackson. Put them in the Hall of Fame. Nettles did win a home run championship, I think, in 76, right? Interesting enough, not even one of the years that he was competing, that he was that high. Let me see. Where is Nettles? 76, he led the league. 16th in the MVP voting. Then the next 2 years, he was 5th, and he was 6th. He had 37 homers. With 107 RBIs in the Yankees' 77 World Series season, 27 and 93 in 78. Wins back-to-back Gold Gloves. I could talk about Greg Nettles all day. I've been trying to get an interview with Greg Nettles forever. Can't see. Just around the corner. We talked about a lot of the off-season stuff Wednesday night, John. A little bit of SEC news. So tune in Wednesday night. We'll get into that. I talked a little bit about your boy Lane Kiffin earlier. I have him down on my notes to chat about today. What a hypocrite, talking about what a disaster college football is. And I love Lane Kiffin, as John knows. I know John's happy that he didn't become his coach, but he flirted with. He's worried about the NIL and the college portal, the transfer portal, and he's made use of both to help get Ole Miss and Florida Atlantic before that moving in the right direction. Plus, if there's things that are wrong with college football, it's coaches flirting with other schools. He flirted with Auburn for a month last year while his own team went in the tank. He left Tennessee. I think Tennessee fans still want to lynch. I probably shouldn't say that. I'll probably get banned. Still want to lynch Lane Kiffin. The Facebook police aren't watching. So what a hypocrite, right? No bigger hypocrite at all. And John says there's only 2 seasons in the football season and getting ready for football season. I don't know. You got a pretty good baseball team with pretty good attendance and a lot of people paying attention there in Atlanta. And a pretty good team in Tampa, too. Although Tampa's not really the South, right? I've always heard, the further south you go, the further north you are. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think that's true in Florida anymore. 3-peat coming, John. We're going to have we'll have some great debate during the college football huddle this year because one of the great storylines will be whether Georgia can 3-peat. And also LSU, which was ahead of schedule, I think, last year. I think John will attest to that. Can they continue that momentum and be a serious challenger to Georgia in the SEC? The NFL Hall of Fame is a joke. It is a joke. Again, nobody knows. I talked about this. Rick saw the interview. Some of you saw the interview I had with Chuck Foreman, who I think should be in a Hall of Fame. He thinks he should be in a Hall of Fame. He talked about how nobody knows what the criteria is to be in a Hall of Fame. Chuck Foreman was a fullback, guys, not a running back, not a halfback, a fullback, running for 1,000 yards a year, catching 60 or 70 passes a year, changing the way the game was played in a lot of ways. Not in the Hall of Fame. Best question I ever asked anybody. Not best question. Best answer I ever got. We'd had this conversation about the Hall of Fame and guys that are in and how do you get in. And he explained to me how he doesn't understand what the criteria is or why the process is what it is. And I said, do you think you belong in the Hall of Fame? And he said, you're goddamn right I belong in the Hall of Fame. Tell that story a lot. I know, I apologize. But the Hall of Fame, we'll get into that. You know what? I'm going to do it right now. We'll kind of jump around. It is a stream of consciousness. We can go back to some baseball here in a bit. I want to look. Let's look at the. I have this up here somewhere. Here we are. Here's the class of 23, which will be going in just a few weeks. Hall of Fame game, I think, is August 3rd. The night before is the inductions. Rondé Barber had a really nice career. Is he one of the best defensive backs of all time? I'm not sure. Darrelle Revis, I think, belongs in the Hall of Fame. Joe Thomas, tremendous offensive lineman, never played on great teams. I do think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. Zach Thomas, no freaking way. Zach Thomas was an animal on the football field. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer at linebacker. Sorry. DeMarcus Ware, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say yes. Don Coryell. Don Coryell's an interesting case. Never made it to a Super Bowl. But Don Coryell was influential. He was elected as a coach / contributor. Don Coryell helped change the game of football. For better or worse. Eric Coryell was the beginnings of modern football. And I do think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. Chuck Howley, yes. You hate the Cowboys all you want. Chuck Howley belongs in the Hall of Fame. Pretty sure Chuck Howley's the only player on a losing team to win an MVP in a Super Bowl. 1971. Let's see if I get this right. Super Bowl V. MVP, Chuck Howley, linebacker. The only player on a losing team ever to win the MVP. Back to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Palermo should be left out just because he went to Mississippi State. Wow, John. Come on, that's not fair. Didn't Will Clark go to Mississippi State as well? Where'd Will Clark? I thought he went to Mississippi State as well. I'm not sure. John Gonzalez still was. Junior Ortiz says was a former Mets backup catcher. Thank you, John. I knew you'd catch that. Either you or Drew would have caught that. He played with the Pirates, too. I think it's somebody different. I think he might have been a boxer. There might have been a boxer named that, too. Yankees traded Johnny Ellis, and I think also in that trade were like Rusty Torres. Was Jerry Kenney in that trade? Nettles trade. I feel like there was a couple other guys. Johnny Ellis and Thurman Munson, as they were coming up through the Yankee organization, were kind of on par. And the Yankees at one time thought Johnny Ellis would be the catcher of the future. And he just never panned out. Not as good defensively as what was I going to say? Not good as defensively as Thurman, and certainly not as good offensively, and that just never worked out. So he got traded with Jerry Moses in exchange for Johnny Ellis, Jerry Kenney, Charlie Spikes, who was he had some decent years with the Indians. He was a big Yankee prospect at the time, and Rusty Torres. I was pretty close there. I missed one guy. A key guy. Charlie Spikes was probably, in my mind, the key guy in this trade for the Indians. Great trade. By the way, that's one of the first trades. That trade was made in 1972. I will argue that's the trade that was the springboard for the Yankees starting to rebound after 10 years of mismanagement by CBS and whatnot. Greg Nettles was the first piece of changing the direction. Of course, I heard about the Northwestern College drama. I've been talking about it on pretty much all my shows, and the Are You Serious show, this show, the college show. We talked about it. It gets uglier and uglier every minute. I'll comment again that I do not know how Pat Fitzgerald gets fired. He has to be fired. It's starting to come out that the coaches knew what was going on. Not that they fostered an environment of hazing. Hazing is just bullying by a different name. And now it's coming out that all the coaches knew what was going on. How do all the assistant coaches don't get fired, including Brown, who's taken over as the interim head coach? This program, which is, Pat Fitzgerald is a very successful coach, the most successful coach in Northwestern history, last couple years notwithstanding. But this program now has been set back. This wasn't a great football factory anyway, but they were very competitive, except for the last few years in the Big Ten. Who's going to send their school to a kid where you can't trust this isn't going to happen? Hazing needs to go away. It's bullying with a different name. This is taking it even to a different level, and it's maybe not even borderline criminal. A lot of heads are going to roll. Lawsuits are already being filed right and left, and we'll get into more of that again probably Wednesday night, Anthony, going forward. John talking about Lane. Lane was actually high on my list when LSU was looking for a new head coach last offseason. I thought you were one of the guys who did not want that. Must have been another SEC elitist LSU fan. I say that because I know John relishes being called an SEC elitist. I'm surprised to hear you say that. I thought you were one of the guys who used to rip me. I know the Mad New Yorker does. I think Lane Kiffin's a great football coach. Is he a great guy? I don't know. Has he matured? I hope so. John Gonzalez, former Hurricane, absolutely a great player at Miami. Before Miami became the football factory that it became, and I was falling back into the pack. But Chuck Foreman was a great college player and a transformational player in the NFL, in my mind. And I think in his too, in all fairness. And he was a great interview. Had a great time interviewing Chuck Foreman. And we'll get back to doing the one-on-ones here soon. With my move, things kind of got put on hold, and Dan Harris is going to start reaching out to some of the people that we had tentatively getting ready to set up, and I'll put together a new list for him. But we got some good names coming up to be interviewed soon. Jim Sundberg, former Ranger, Reggie Brooks, former Notre Dame running back, Kay Mercer I want to have on, and she's got a busy summer, but she'll be on sometime here in the coming months. The widow of my favorite ball player in any sport, Bobby Ray Mercer. And amongst some others. I got some other names, too, that I don't have right in front of me. Jim Kern, lots of former Major League players. It's not that Lane is wrong. He's not wrong. That's what I said. He's a hypocrite. He's absolutely right. But he's part of the problem. You know? He's absolutely part of the problem. Because if he was at a school with more NIL resources, he wouldn't give two craps about the fairness of it. Agreed. And he's also used the portal to great advantage, both at Florida Atlantic and at Mississippi. And plus, as I said, the way he's treated his pursuit of other jobs is also part of what's wrong with college football today. The way coaches just overtly, with a contract, are chasing other jobs. Don't sign contracts for long term if you don't want to stay. Lane has no one to blame but himself for not being at a better school. If he weren't such a brat and a PR nightmare waiting to happen, he'd be at a better school. No doubt in my mind. I think he's in a good place at Ole Miss. I really do. Last year notwithstanding, they imploded at the end of the year. And I do think he had injuries, but I think it had a lot to do with his being distracted, not being not coaching well game days in my mind, and also the team being distracted by his, I think, overt flirtation with Auburn. You think Jason Kelsey is a first-round Hall of Fame? I would say his brother is. I think his brother definitely is. You know, you look at it's a little harder. It's so much harder to define the greatness compared to others of linemen. Some guys just stand out. Anthony Munoz, for instance, stands out. Larry Little stands out. There's a bunch of other. I just throw a couple at you. He's been to the Pro Bowl a bunch of times. He's been an All-Pro. He's been an All-Pro now that I look at it. 5, 6 times. Been to the Pro Bowl 9. Yeah. Yes, he should be a first-time Hall of Famer. Offensive linemen don't often get, and again, I don't have numbers in front of me. My gut tells me that offensive linemen do not get first ballot consideration, if you will, in the NFL. We'll see. Now he's a center, which is an important position. Some guys have. So Howley against the Colts, definitely the Blunder Bowl, or I'm not sure what they called that, but there was like 11 turnovers in that game. Horribly played game, won by the Colts though, 16-13, I think. Jim O'Brien with a last-second field goal. Chuck Howley, the MVP. Mattingly got 8 of the 12 votes needed for the Hall of Fame by this senior committee, or whatever we call it these days. Don Mattingly belongs in the Hall of Fame. Kirby Puckett's in the Hall of Fame. Don Mattingly belongs in the Hall of Fame. The numbers are there. The problem is he didn't do it long enough. But if you look at the high water mark of his baseball career, he was as good as anybody that played at the time. And that's part of the criteria in my mind. Are you at the top of your position? He was at the top of his position for sure. And he was one of the top players in baseball for 5 or 6 years. Charlie Spikes. Charlie Spikes had great power. Never really, he had a couple of 20 homer seasons, I think, for the Indians. He might have made an all-star team with the Indians, but never really met his potential. Again, another reason not to hang on to prospects, I guess. Yankees held on to Charlie Spikes for a while, thinking he would be the answer in right field. John Donley, by the way, I like your. I don't know if your what do you call that profile picture thing there? It's a great one, John. I think I remember when you changed to that. Did you ever hear Skip Bertman digging Mississippi State? No, there's only one beauty parlor in Starksville, and they only give estimates. John, that's why I love having you on our. Johnny Ellis did pass away recently. Another great, again, Yankees had a lot of guys who they thought were going to be the next great thing. And they never seemed to turn out, right? They were either trading for guys that were too old, or they had guys that just never panned out. Charlie Spikes, Johnny Ellis being great examples. Rusty Torres being great examples. Rusty Torres had some other issues holding him back here after he retired. Not holding him back. He was certainly totally responsible for them. Or they're trading for guys that were washed up like Johnny Ellis and not Johnny Ellis, Johnny Callison, Felipe Alou was a nice player still with the Yankees, but he was past his prime. That's why the Yankees couldn't get it going before. 74 was the first year. I was 14, and 74 was a year. But actually, that's the year they stole Chambliss from Cleveland. You know what's funny, John? We're really in a stream of consciousness now, right? And I'm happy. I love this. At the time, Yankee fans and the press were in an uproar over this trade. Yankees traded half their pitching staff to get Chambliss and Dick Tidrow from Cleveland in April of 1974. And Chambliss was the next building block. He didn't have a good year in 74. He was terrible. But after that, he became a very steady, good defensive first baseman, clutch hitter. Not a lot of power for a guy that big, not as much as you would expect. But he certainly hit a couple big home runs. He hit one big home run that we can remember, right, John? But there was an uproar because they traded Fred Bean, Buskey, Peterson, I want to say Steve Klein, and maybe another pitcher to the Indians. There was a huge backlash, and I think he was hitting about 180 or something at the time. Big backlash, but the Yankee fans came to love Chris Chambliss. I know that. And trading Chris Chambliss out of here hurt this team, I think, in the early 80s. He had some decent years left. And he was a quiet leader on this team. I equate moving, and again, I understand that when they traded him to Toronto, Rick Cerone had a really good first season with the Yankees, especially offensively. Good God, he was probably high up in the MVP voting. And they needed to replace Thurman, who had died tragically the year before. But I've always equated trading Chris Chambliss the way the Reds trading Tony Perez to the Expos. Chambliss was one of the reliable guys like Perez. Not flashy, but, 90 RBIs every year, good defense, a quiet calming presence in that chaotic clubhouse. The interim was new, wasn't he? I think he's the one that blew the whistle on the hazing. He was. He could have been. And I may have missed that part of the story. If that's the case, that explains why he's still there. But they haven't fired all of the assistants, I don't believe, John. And they need to do that. And every time a kid comes forward, and now there's a ton of them. There's about 10 lawsuits right now between ex-players. I don't think it's all football players either, to be fair, with the lawsuits. Right now, I believe it's the football program, the baseball program, and at least one of the women's programs as well. So this was this was something that was prevalent throughout the sports departments in general. And it's sad. It was Lincoln Riley that was really down. Lincoln Riley. That's right. Okay. My bad there, John. We talk about so many things, I forget who says what. I forget what I say sometimes. I agree, John. I'm a big Lane Kiffin fan. And I do think Lane Kiffin has grown up a little bit. Now, these comments he made this last week were stupid. Even Paul Feinstein, who I don't always agree with a lot of things Feinstein has to say, was talking about the hypocrisy of what Lane Kiffin had to say here. But I think Lane Kiffin is a great offensive mind. He just gets in his own way. As John mentioned, he's a bit immature and bratty, and that's hurt him. I think he's a good football coach, though. Jim Kern, excellent catch there, John, former Indian and Ranger. We were supposed to do an interview with him a couple months ago. He had some health issues come up, and his wife did, and then he was busy selling a business, and he reached out to me a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago now. Had mentioned they were still in the process of some stuff, but he still wanted to get together and do an interview. I'm looking forward to interviewing him. He was for 2-3 years with the Rangers and the Indians. He was one of the best relief pitchers in baseball. Nettles got me. Bottom of the ninth. What tune? What tune you got there? CA pops up out of nowhere with a strange Nettles reference. I'd love to hear. Give me the rest of the story, or are you just making a song lyric? Lane has something like 6 starting quarterbacks on his roster, and I think he got through all of them through the portal. I think you're probably right. I do think he might have one recruit on his roster at quarterback. I do think Mississippi will have a bounce back season this year. I don't think they're going to challenge in the SEC, but I think they'll have a better season they had last year. Jim Otto's another guy I was trying to think of when we were talking about centers. Ron Webster also came to mind. The Steeler great, and what a sad story. Read the story of Webster. I think it was Ron Webster, right? Ron. Great player, leader of that Pittsburgh Steeler offensive line in the 70s and early 80s, and certainly suffered from CTE and some other things, and I believe he ended up homeless at one point, and it was a sad story, and his end was not very pretty, unfortunately, but it's also one of the stories I think that woke the NFL up to some of this stuff. Andrew Jones belongs in a Hall of Fame. All right. We will take a look at Andrew Jones. I do believe, and I think it's Andrew. I don't think there's a E in there, but that's okay. We don't take off for spelling here because I'd be in big trouble. Andrew Jones, I will say this again, probably the best defensive center fielder I've ever seen. Better than Paul Blair, better than Willie Mays, better than Cesar Geronimo. Anybody you want to throw out at me, he was better then. Let's look at his numbers. 434 home runs, 1,289 RBIs. And sorry if I keep looking at these counting numbers that I do think matter. And unfortunately, many of the new school people do not. But, I see what happened here. My screen blew back. Sorry about that. I don't know why I got that. Why do we have that? I guess we're going to have to live with it because I can't quite get rid of that right now. Sorry about that white mark there. And sorry if I use the counting numbers because I think they still matter. They mattered for 150 years. I think they still matter. Home runs, RBIs, runs scored, stolen bases. 434, 1,289, 254 batting average hurts them a little bit like Nettles. But again, I think the defense, and I think in his case, his OPS is over 800, 823. Gold gloves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 gold gloves. Rookie of the year in 1997. If you remember, he came up in 96 and put a hurting on the Yankees in the first, helped put the hurting on the Yankees in the first 2 games of that World Series. It looked like the Yankees had no shot. Andrew Jones, and he only had 113 plate appearances that year. But he was a big factor on that team coming down the stretch. I'll give you Andrew Jones in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, I didn't know if it was Beavis or Butthead, but you've only watched Frog Baseball short clip. I don't even know what the hell that is. You guys are all over this. I remember Rich McKinney. I remember that Rich McKinney was brought to the Yankees in a trade for Stan Bonson. Yankees had a hole at third base. This is before Nettles. Rich McKinney had a decent year with the White Sox the year before. You know, the Yankees, some scout was drunk one day in the stands and thought he was the next great thing. And they traded Stan Bonson, who at the time was a very good and promising young pitcher and had a good career after he left the Yankees with the White Sox and later the A's. And Rich McKinney came to the Yankees and very quickly showed he could not play third base in New York. One of the worst trades in Yankee history. So do I remember Rich McKinney? How would I do? Drew. Every team has draft picks that don't work out. A Reds HR manager. Home run manager, or are we talking about human resource? Manager once told me that only 1 out of every 100 picks make it to the majors. And that's just for one day, not a lengthy career. I would say those numbers sound about right. The numbers are astronomical. There's only, how many jobs are there in Major League Baseball? And even less in, say, basketball or football. Well, football's got a lot. But there's only 600 jobs in there. I can't do math. You know where I went to school? I went to Perth. 25 times 30. 750 jobs at any one time in Major League Baseball. How many guys get drafted every year? Doesn't baseball still have a gazillion rounds to their draft? Plus, there's less teams in the minor leagues that develop these guys, and they don't develop them the right way, so they got less of a chance to get to the majors. And if they do, they don't have a great chance of staying because they're not fundamentally sound. I didn't see Kenny pop in. Good morning, Kenny. Where are you? Good morning. Sitting on the Mackenzie River in Oregon. Is that literally, Kenny, you're literally in Oregon, or you've taking a virtual trip to Oregon this morning, if you follow my sorry, Kenny. Braun was hired this offseason by Northwestern, according to Wikipedia. Okay. I really think he either blew the whistle or he was brought in to be the interim when they fired Fitzgerald. Here's the thing. Here's my problem with this whole Northwestern thing. They did a 6-month investigation. At the end of that, they said there were some hazing issues and that Fitzgerald was going to be suspended for 2 games. Then about 2 days later, a player comes forward and talks about what the hazing issues actually were. And the president says, oh, wait, I got to reevaluate this now. Well, first of all, if you did a 6-month investigation, did you not know that these were sexually charged accusations? Or did you think it wasn't that important until players started saying, oh, this was really pretty bad stuff? So you either didn't know, which is bad, or you're covering it up. Or you thought you'd cover it up, suspend a coach for 2 games. The president of the university is getting fired as well, John. He's getting fired. Did I say Feinstein? So anyway, this goes further than the coaching staff as well. Because to me, when you look at what happened at the outset, it looks to me like the university was trying to cover up how disgusting these allegations actually were. Or they're incompetent. Their investigation for 6 months was incompetent. Or both. Did I say Feinstein? I'm sorry. I meant Feinbaum. Blowhard. I'd love to get Feinbaum on the college football show, though. How can I do that? I did send him a message through Facebook and Instagram. I never heard back. I might put Dan Harris on him. Dan has a way to get these guys on. I'd love to get Feinbaum on. I think he's a blowhard, yeah, but he's enjoyable. I find him entertaining, if you will. Mike Webster. Thank you, John Gonzalez. What did I say, Ron? Mike Webster. Yeah, sad story, the Mike Webster story. And there's a lot of them in football, unfortunately. It's a violent game. They know what they signed up for. That's the thing, though. The Mike Websters of the world, they knew what they signed up for. The Jim Ottos of the world, and they weren't making money like these guys are today. But they understood what they signed up for. And I'm not saying, that we should just ignore the problems that players have with the CTE and other issues. But, it's a violent sport. And if you legislate the violence out of it, then you don't have the same sport. You're not going to have the same appeal. And the guys who play it make a lot of money. Not Jim Otto and Mike Webster, but the guys playing now, they know the risks. Best thing about Oregon is Oregon green. Are you talking about money? I do know what you're talking about, Kenny. Kiner is 300. Listen, I don't know how Ralph Kiner, to me, he's a home run champion. Again, we're really doing a lot of Hall of Fame debate today, and I'm okay with that. A little bit different. We don't get a chance to go off on these tangents a lot. Let's look at Ralph Kiner's numbers. See how close John is. 369 home runs, which I believe is maybe the same number Joe DiMaggio hit, just from my head. 1,000 RBIs. Had a fairly short career. He only played 9 years. That's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11. Why is that not adding up in my head? Oh, yeah, 9 years. That's all he played. No MVPs, but he's in the top 10 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Led the league in home runs. He's got to be in the Hall of Fame. He led the league in home runs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times he led the league in home runs. So again, but here's an argument I'll say to you. If Ralph Kiner can get in the Hall of Fame because he was dominant over a 9-year period, not even a 9-year period, by the way. His numbers dropped precipitously. 1947, let's say, was his peak. After 1953, they dropped a lot. So what's that? 6 years? Don Mattingly had 6 years of that type of production. Maybe not the home run totals, but being a dominant player at his position, a dominant player in the game at the time. If Ralph Kiner in a Hall of Fame, then Don Mattingly has to be in a Hall of Fame. I'll say it again. I'll keep comparing players. Throw them out there. Glory Days, Bruce and E Street Brand. Nettles. Oh, yes. Thank you, CA. Again, my 63-year mind doesn't. I love it. Great reference. CA, you get the medal for today. Which guy's which? The fact that I don't know which is which, I'm proud of, by the way. I can tell you I've never seen an episode of Beavis and Butthead and never plan to. Bill Melton was a White Sox third baseman at the time. The Yankees should have acquired. Melton was okay. He would have been better than Rich McKinney. I'm not sure how well Melton would have done in the old Yankee Stadium, though, with Death Valley out there in left center. If you remember, it was tough. That's why DiMaggio hit 369 home runs and not 500. I remember, though, again, I was a kid at the time. John, there's no way you're as old as me. How do you know all this? I'll be rude and I'll ask you how you're old. I'm 63 years old. I know why I know Rich McKinney and Bill Melton. You're not 63 years old, John. If you are, God bless you. You look a whole lot better than me at 63. Bill Melton had a couple really good years in 70 and 71. He led the league in homers once. Hit 33 home runs both those years. If I remember right, Mercer tied him one of those years. 70 or 71, Mercer hit 33 as well. Probably 71. Other than that, his career was pretty mediocre. But I would say if I'm going to trade for one of those guys, I would rather have Bill Melton here. Nice player for a few years. I do want to know how you know all this stuff, though. Now the show's become comparing Oregon marijuana to New York marijuana, which is all legal, by the way, so we can talk about it. Facebook. I know I've said some things that might get me banned today because you take them out of context. Yes, I am. I think that means he's actually there. John, I think Northwestern didn't want to fire Fitzgerald. I agree. That's my point. Because they can't get a better coach, and they were trying to slip one past the goalie by just suspending him. As I said, cover up what really happened. So the 6-month investigation uncovered the actual hazing incidents and the absolute nastiness of all of it. That is really driving me nuts, by the way. And they were going to cover it up and hope nobody came forward. Well, one of these players was going to speak up. The press would be all over this. What were they? What kind of hazing was it? You think they weren't going to ask? Hazing needs to go away. Just bullying. Just stop. Jim Clack. Jim Clock. What the hell's Jim? That you got me a name I don't know. Help me out, Drew. Jim Clack. Jim Clack. Oh, he's a football player. I'm sorry. I had my mind on baseball. Jim Clack was a giant offensive center. Now I recognize the name. How long did he play? Played quite a way with Pittsburgh and with the Giants. Never any All Pros, never any Pro Bowls though. So you threw me for a second. You moved me from baseball to football. I've heard other show hosts talk about getting Feinbaum on their shows, and apparently is extremely difficult. Chuck Oliver says he can't get Paul to return his phone calls. But there you go. I've tried a few times, and again, I haven't knocked down his door, but I'd love to get him on. Probably not going to happen. But maybe I get my man Dan Harris. Guys, Dan Harris from Let's Talk Sports. If you don't follow Let's Talk Sports, go over there and follow it. Follow Northeast Streaming Sports as well. Let's Talk Sports has got some really, really good shows, some really good hosts. And Dan Harris does a great job helping me get back to that interview portion that I like so much. And we'll get to those here, hopefully, in the coming weeks. Don and Keith should go together. Don and Keith should go into the Hall of Fame as best first baseman in baseball for New York in that time frame. Oh, Hernandez? Don Mattingly was so much better player than Keith Hernandez in his prime. I'm sorry. I won't even listen. Hernandez had a nice career. I do not think Hernandez belongs in the Hall of Fame. Just me. And Donnie at his peak, Keith Hernandez couldn't carry his jock. There's your hot take for the day. 60. All right. I didn't think you were that old, John. Holding up well there, my friend. I hate it when people look younger than me. And I'm older than them. Wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. I want to look good for 63. I look good for 73 these days. I used to look good for my age. Now I look good for somebody else's age. You're holding up well, John, or you're not putting up recent pictures one or the other. Kidding. I love you, John. You're a good guy. John, again, for those who didn't hear me earlier, John Gonzalez, the Sports Authorities, one of the best groups on Facebook when it comes to sports. He's got great shows. He lets me put my shows up. He's got some other shows that we'll post there. He shares all kinds of great content, nostalgic content, kind of what we're talking about here. Is some of you guys are going, who the frick is Rich McKinney? Random question. How do I feel about your Mac Jones quarterback? Well, that's not a random question. We're pretty much all over the board today anyway. I feel really good. And I think you guys know, I feel like sometimes, and I don't understand why, I am very hard on my teams. Very hard. You hear me with the Yankees. Very hard. Teams 100 games, but they haven't won championships. I'm hard on my teams. And I want to be wrong when I make criticisms. I'm very high on Mac Jones. I still am very high on Mac Jones. Last year, I'm giving Mac Jones a pass for. Not his fault. His head coach put him in a position to fail. He didn't give him an offensive coordinator. He didn't give him a quarterback coach. Mac Jones had nowhere to go. And then he chastised him for going outside. And I don't normally criticize Bill Belichick this way, but I will now. He chastises the guy for going outside the organization to try to get a little direction. And he went to Alabama and Bill O'Brien, by the way. And the kid had nobody to go to last year. So year two of a quarterback's growth is very important. And they set him back. They gave him no chance to win. And by the way, by the end of the season, Mac Jones was playing much better football. Much better football. Now he's got a real offensive coordinator. They've got a real offensive scheme. They've got a real offensive line coach. Now, if they have some real offensive linemen, that'll help. They did not get the weapon they wanted for him in Hopkins. The organization outside of the head coach pretty much loves the kid and his attitude. I'm still high on Mac Jones. With that said, Anthony, this is a big year for Mac Jones. It's a big year for Bill Belichick because something I thought would not happen has happened, and he's probably on a make good season. He needs to win, or he may be out. And Mac Jones this year, they have to decide on his 5th-year option in this offseason, and this is a key year for him. I think Bill O'Brien, similar to McDaniel before him, because I saw this. Bill O'Brien was the offensive coordinator here before. Well, he wasn't the offensive coordinator; he didn't have the job title, but he was the play caller. And he makes use of the weapons that he has and plays to their strengths, which we didn't do last year. And I think Bill O'Brien will make Mac Jones much, much better, much closer to the player we saw in year 1, maybe even a little better. And I think this offense will be much better. And I think Bill O'Brien's worth 2 wins, so this team wins 10 games. Simple hazing, making a freshman, that's fine. I don't have a problem with, no, I don't mean to laugh because this is a bad situation, but your terminology is making me giggle. Yes, if you want to say, all right, the freshmen are going to serve the seniors their meals in the lunch hall, okay, well, it's fine. Singing their fight song, it's fine. But making kids drink until they puke and pass out and give them alcohol poisoning, stupid. Tying to a tree naked and sitting outside in the weather overnight, stupid. This type of behavior, stupid. And criminal, perhaps. I see that he played the bulk of his career with the Steelers. We are getting to some good nostalgia in here, John. If you talk about leadership, then you have to put Keith and his. Yes, he was a great leader. He was a great leader, and I think leadership means a lot. With that said, Don Mattingly, head and shoulders, was a better player. And Don Mattingly was the leader of that Yankee team, by the way. He did it a little differently than Keith Hernandez did it. But he was the leader of that team in the locker room. Philly sports guy hates him. Oh, Hernandez, I know. So does George Costanza, by the way. I look great. Well, thank you. And you don't divulge your beauty secrets? Listen, I'll be 63 in a couple of weeks, and I'm kind of happy being 63. Baseball stat. Texas leads Major League Baseball on average, 273. Also, where's that? Hold on here. There's something else I wanted to bring up on the stat side here with teams. One of the things, because we talked about OPS, not OPS, but on base percentage here. How do I get to? Here we go. I mentioned. Damn it! Why? How do I get all of them? Oh, here we go. I think I do it this way. I mentioned last year that one of the big problems I had with the Rangers was their on-base percentage was very low in the 300s. They've improved that to 341, which, again, that's 70, almost 70 points over, as Drew points out, being a good benchmark. They hit lots of homers. The key is going to be, and I do think they don't rely just on home runs. I mean, one of the numbers that I like a lot that tells me a little bit about a team's offense is the number of doubles that they hit. They're second in the league in doubles behind the Red Sox with 219. So it's not a team, although they hit a lot of home runs, they don't have to rely on a home run. This is a great offense. pitching, I think, still would be the thing that holds them back. You and I both, John, grew up during the Horace Clarke era. Started watching Yankee baseball, probably, I would say 9 years old, I started to understand what the hell I was looking at, right? And we didn't get to see a lot of games up here. So it was a lot of radio. And I love baseball on the radio, especially back then with Messer and Scooter and Bill White were the radio and the TV team. They'd move on and off. But we'd only get 10 games up here. You'd get a game, maybe a little more. I shouldn't say 10 games, maybe 25 games or something on Saturday. We'd get a Saturday game if it was during the day, which most of them were at the time. So I grew up listening to them on the radio and Horace Clarke, who, by the way, Horace Clarke has an era named for him. Horace Clarke is by no means a great player, by no means a Hall of Fame player, but Horace Clarke gets a bad rap being the face of this CBS era with the Yankees. Horace Clarke was, an average Major League second baseman at the time. Didn't hang in there on the double play, didn't walk a lot, but he would lead the team in stolen bases. He would lead the league in double plays sometimes, which might talk about how many base runners Yankees had. But the Horace Clarke era is funny that whole down era, and there was a couple decent years in there. Gets named for Horace Clarke, and I think Horace Clarke gets a bad rap. Newman, pretty boy, the spitting controversy on Seinfeld. Oh, that's right. It was Newman so much that didn't like him. It was remember the whole slow motion thing? Like they did like the grassy knoll video of the Kennedy assassination. God, Seinfeld was a great show. Number 2 through 5 teams in average. Atlanta, we know how well they're doing. Miami, how well they're doing. Well, and again, they're propped up a lot by Arias. I'll say his name wrong every single time. Boston, and interestingly, Washington's up there with one of the worst records in baseball, but they're up there in the top 5. That's interesting. Where does Washington? Well, their pitching's really bad. We know that, right? I guess the only way I'm going to do this, I want to see their other numbers. Washington, not much power, only 88 home runs. They don't score a lot of runs, so they don't turn that. Well, they don't turn that average into much run-wise. Everybody's up in stolen bases. 174 doubles. I'm looking at the wrong thing. So runs, I was looking at RBIs. 419. That's still like they're in the bottom half of the league in runs scored. So they don't turn that batting average into much production, all right? I mean, when you take an OPS, which again takes the average or the on base percentage and the slugging into consideration, they drop all the way down to 18. Where are we? Boy, this day's flying by. You guys have been awesome today. I know we've been all over but that is this show. This show is a stream of consciousness. I don't mind jumping around. I don't mind doing what we did today. Hang on, I want to look at something. But you guys have done a great job. I love it when you guys carry the show and I just play off you guys. This is what I enjoy more than anything outside of the interviews. I love this show. I really do. I love the college football huddle because it's kind of the same way on one topic. But here we're all over the place. By the way, quick little British Open update for you guys before I'll get back to your comments. For those that care, I know, Drew, you don't care, but I'll throw it out there because I care. Not Bob Harmon. What the hell's his name? Brian Harmon. Still leading. He's only played 3 holes. He's still got a 5-stroke lead over Straka, who's -6, Fleetwood, who's -6, Young, who's -6, John Rahm, who set a course record in a major championship yesterday with 63, still six back. I still think somebody's going to make a run here. Rory's 3 under through 9. I really think if Rory can, shoot 3 under on the back, post a 3 or 4 under on the back, post a -9 or a -10, you could have a shot, depending. The weather changes there, like every 20 minutes, the weather changes. So very interesting. The Americans have not had a great, they've done well with Harmon and Young, 2 guys you would not expect to see up there. But a lot of the other guys have not done particularly well. Some of the bigger names have had a tough week. Listen, the British Open is one of the toughest tournaments to win, in my mind. I know they set up U.S. Open courses very tough, but here, the links courses are so much different. To watch on TV with no trees is really weird to watch. The contours of the courses are amazing. You get off a fairway here. Players complain about the rough at the U.S. Open. You get into the thick here, you might be in grass this long. This long. Greens can be lightning quick. The weather's ridiculous. The bunkers are like, hitting out of, your basement. 15-foot bunkers. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And I'll be rooting for Corey. I root for Corey, and when Tiger gets back in there, for the first time in my life, I'll be rooting for Tiger Woods because they stood their ground during this whole PGA Live thing, while other players were just going out and getting a paycheck. Blood money. And the PGA throws them under the bus by folding. Anyway. Gotta go. Family calling. Kenny, let me know when you're going to be. I think we're getting close to where you can get out and maybe play a little golf. If you want to take a ride, we'll play down here. If you need me to take a ride, I will. But we got Eagle Crest. We got Van Patten. We got fairways of Half Moon right around, all around me here. So we got some good courses. I love Eagle Crest, by the way. Drew pitching 1 and 5, pitching 1 through 5. ERA Tampa Bay, we know where they are. Houston, which has had to have good pitching because their offense has been atrocious. Minnesota 3.75, keeping them alive in that putrid AL Central. San Diego, I thought pitching was going to be their problem, and hitting has been their problem. And Atlanta, surprisingly enough, and they've got some injuries now in their bullpen. They've been without Wright and Fried for a lot of the first part of the season. So things can only get better there in my mind. Yeah, the 1983 batting race between Mattingly and Winfield was special, John. If I remember, it was a little bit of controversy, similar to, 6 or 7 years before when McRae and Brett going down to the last day. Mattingly and Winfield went down to the last day. And there was some unfortunate accusations made. And I believe that happened in this Mattingly Winfield race as well, the last day of the season, that some plays were not. Guys didn't try as hard to catch balls for Mattingly because of his skin tone. I don't think they were as loud and it was big a controversy as it was when Brett and McRae were going head to head, because McRae and Winfield were different type personalities, I think. Because McRae was very vocal about what he thought happened that last day. But in any event, it was a great race. And that was one of the only. Listen, the 80s were very, 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 very frustrating for most part with the Yankees. They either were very bad or they had teams that just weren't good enough. Just like teams today. There was no wild card. If there were wild cards, the Yankees would have been making it. And who knows, they might have won a World Series. But they were never good enough because they're always flawed in just a little somewhere. And we were always making stupid trades. Speaking of Seinfeld, we were always trading Jay Buhner for Phelps. I remember a great Seinfeld episode where I think George had been fired, and his father went looking for him. The only question that he had, somebody will correct me if I'm wrong with the details here, but the only question his had was what he had for the organization was, how could you trade Buhner for Phelps? Kevin Moss. There was a couple of guys. Kevin Moss had a great second half to a season. He was going to be the next Mattingly, big home run hitter. He hit, I don't know, 15, 16, 18 home runs in the second half. There was a couple guys like that. Shane Spencer was going to be the next Mickey Mantle. Dan Pasqua. We had a bunch of guys who had like big second halves and it just never amounted to anything. Kevin Moss was part of one of those just, forgettable 80s seasons. And he made it fun, I guess. Horace did pass away last year. He's a legend in St. Croix. There's a great... there is another great group I'll mention, John. You're probably part of it. I think the Horace Clark years is the name of it. George Gerard, if I'm saying his name right, runs it. Great group. Covers the Horace Clark years plus a little bit. Go a little past that. And it's really a great group. There's somebody that they'll like pick a year and they'll go day by day. So they'll match up to today's date with what happened in that year and the Yankees pennant races, let's say, or seasons. So, and there's a lot of good commentary back and forth about that era in the Yankees. Celerino Sanchez. Again, so how about Celerino Sanchez, Jerry Kenney, Rich McKinney, Bobby Cox before that. All guys trying to play third base for the Yankees. Yankees went from when they had Clete Boyer to when they had Greg Nettles. They must have had 40 third basemen. That's had a similar situation. MLB records and streaks and records of note. Seattle is, let me pull up we didn't talk about this. We'll go a little bit over here this morning because we got a little sidetracked with some of our nostalgia, which I'm not going to apologize for. I had a lot of fun with that. Thank you, John, and some others for all of that. Looking at Seattle, they've won 3 in a row. They're 2 games over 500, which I think might be their high water mark of the year. They're getting closer to that wild card. That last wild card, I think they're just 4 games back of right now. Again, expect them to be very active in this coming week, leading up to the trade deadline next Tuesday. What else has Drew got here? Minnesota is up 4 games over 500, which is, again, they were higher than this earlier in the year, played better, but they're 7-3 in their last 10, 2 games ahead of the Guardians. Phillies have lost 4 in a row. I've talked, it seems like every week I talk, the Phillies are on a different streak. This has been a very, very streaky team. 4 in a row, 4-6 in their last 10. They've fallen 11.5 games back. And I think they're also on the outside looking in on the wild card at the moment. Yes, they would be 2 games out of the last wild card. What else you got here, Drew? Kansas City and their race with Oakland for the worst record in baseball. Both of them, I don't know what pace we're on. I know on Friday, I think we were on 119 loss pace. The record being 120. I still say one of these teams, maybe both of them, will break it. It's a bad baseball team. I'm sorry. What else you got here, Drew? Miami, 2-8 in its last 8, lost 8 in a row. Miami's starting to show the cracks, but they're still well within a wild card race, 6 games above 500. This team, I think, will look to add a bat here at the deadline. I do think they'll look to add a bat without giving up any of their major chips for the future. That's what I think. What else you got, Drew? Reds have rebounded with 4 wins in a row. Agreed. I think they had lost. They might have lost 6 in a row before that. I know they're 4-6 in their last 10. game and a half behind the Brewers, who have played pretty good baseball as well, 7-3 in their last 10. That's going to be a nice race. I think you're going to see some, again, the division races matter. I still think it matters staying out of that wild card. You're going to see some great races in the NL Central with the Reds and the Brewers. I think the Reds are here to stay, and I think they'll go out and get some pitching. And I think the Dodgers, Diamondbacks, and Giants will be a fun race to watch. Now, the Dodgers are starting to get some daylight. 4 games over the Diamondbacks, 4 games over the Giants. Both of them are on losing streaks, 3 and 4 in a row. And I think the Dodgers may. I don't know. They're doing it with mirrors. I mean, they keep losing a pitcher a day. So I don't know. Let's see. What did I miss? Did I have any major written down here that we'd missed? I talked about that. Aaron Judge, going to start hitting this week. Possibly get on a minor league rehab assignment early in August. Maybe by mid-August, Aaron Judge is back and he can help the Yankees, but they need more than just Aaron Judge. They need Rizzo to actually start hitting. Had a nice hit yesterday, breaking an over 20-something slump. Talked about that. How about what's up? By the way, I got to say something about this. Again, I was watching a bunch of games yesterday. Texas has got to get a real uniform. It looks like a slow-pitch freaking softball team out there. What is wrong with their historically I don't know if they wear these all the time, but this is like the 3rd time I've seen this uniform. It's awful. The hat is awful. The logo is awful. The color scheme's awful. Is it just to sell merchandise? Is that all we care about? Rob Manfred, by the way, reelected or going to be reelected for 5 more years for doing nothing more than filling the frickin' owners' pockets. These uniforms were just atrocious. Oh, my God. Jets told Hard Knocks, by the way, that they will not be giving them access, total access with their cameras. They won't be able to, for instance, have their cameras in when players are cut, which is a big part of what Hard Knocks likes to show. I guess we all like to see other people's ill fate. So Dan Snyder officially out of the NFL. The owners unanimously approved the sale of the team to Josh Harris, who has said he's looking to change the culture before he looks to change the name. More rumors that they will change the name of the team again. I know John Gonzalez, I think, had posted something about that with a picture of Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson is a small part of this ownership group, but obviously you'll see a lot of Magic Johnson like we did with the Dodgers when that happened. So that's an interesting situation. Snyder gone, and the Redskins, the team formerly known as the Redskins, can look to rehabilitate their culture if they can. Training camps will open here in the next couple of weeks, all of them. Hopkins chooses the Titans, chooses the money, in my mind. Don't tell me Tannehill's a better quarterback than Mac Jones, and we talked about Mac Jones before. Don't tell me that. He's just not. He chooses $14 million and 2 years, so $28 million over 1 year and 8. It's okay. Just be honest about what you're doing. I'm okay with that. And I think that's about all I really didn't have. Oh, Barkley, by the way, as we know since we chatted last, the Barkley deadline passed on Monday. The Giants cannot do anything with Barkley negotiation-wise until after the season, so he's either signing the franchise tag tender or he's sitting out the season. He will not be in training camp. You will not see Barkley before week 1 if you see him at all. I think he would be doing himself a huge disservice if he sits out the year. The separation between those who will be able to set up their rotations for the playoffs and the rest will be bigger advantage than past seasons. Agreed. With some of the parity in baseball, I think that's – and the short rotations, I think, having some time off, like the division winners, at least two of the division winners will have a big impact on these playoffs going forward. I agree. Barkley not worth the money. Well, it depends on he's one of the top 5 running backs in football, John. I don't know if we can really say that. If you want to subscribe to the theory of what running backs pay scales will be, then you're probably right. And Daniel Jones, listen, I've been a big Daniel Jones backer, but it's Barkley that makes his team go. Barkley and the Giants, nobody wins here. The Giants are worse off without Barkley, and Barkley cannot afford to sit a season out. He can't. David Burns, watching from Cedar Hill, Texas. Welcome, David. Good to have you with us. I don't think we've seen you before. Are you a Cowboy fan? Are you a Ranger fan? Are you a Astros fan? We've got quite a few people in Texas that chime in here, and we have a bunch of Cowboy fans and a bunch of Ranger and Astro fans. We're in upstate New York here doing this show. We sometimes do it live from the Caribbean, I will say. October. Barkley never should have gone 2 number. I'm not so sure. Again, I don't remember that particular draft and who he got drafted over. But again, he wouldn't be drafted today. He wouldn't be drafted number 2. Right? Running backs since that draft probably are looked at in a totally different realm. And I think that will change. And by the way, Barkley, I can't lump Barkley in with every other runner because there are certainly running backs who contribute more than just to the running game. Barkley's a key to that offense, the key to that offense. McCaffrey, when he can stay healthy. So I don't know that I'd lump him into that pay scale, with the rest of the guys. What time is it? We'll go a little bit more. We're about 8 minutes over. David Burns, just so you know, we normally go 8:30 to 10:30 on Sundays for the Stream of Consciousness show, but sometimes we go over a little bit if we've got things still to talk about and we're still getting some interaction. Rangers look like the team that will be first team in the playoffs if you can keep the winning streak going. Well, they're on a little bit of a losing streak right now with 2 games in a row, but I still think they're going to have trouble holding off the Astros. The champions are the champions until they're not, in my mind. If they can get their offensive issues straightened out, if they can overcome some of the injuries that they've had to the pitching staff, I think the Astros still will have something to say about this division title. Rangers will make the playoffs. I'm certain of that. Unless they stop hitting the ball. Pitching, they better go out and get themselves some pitching. Oh, shit. Hang on a second. I don't need it right now. I'll do it this way. Great show. Thank you, John, for that. Thanks for putting up my old school nostalgia. No, I had a lot of fun today. This is the Stream of Consciousness, John. We'll go in any direction the show's going that day. I know I don't like to keep a format necessarily to this show. We kind of wing it. A lot of the stuff that we might have covered outside of that nostalgia, we cover on other shows anyway, but great to have you with it. Everybody's input's welcome, and I appreciate you coming in because I love some of that old school stuff. You know me. And John, I love having you. Get to John's group, guys. Dan Burns, you're new. David Burns, you're new to the show. John Gonzalez runs one of the best sports groups on Facebook. Get to the Sports Authorities and follow. And you can see shows like this. You can see other shows and some of John's great nostalgic posts as well. What do we got here? CA, currently 4 slots open. Yes, as I mentioned before, 4 slots open in TGI Sports Talk's fantasy football on Yahoo. I'll repost it to the TGI Sports Talk page. David Burns, please go to TGI Sports Talks and like and follow the show or the page. Share it with your friends. If you don't know how to invite people, I can certainly help you. And if you're interested in fantasy football, we have 4 slots left open in the TGI Sports Talk Fantasy Football Showdown. So thanks for that. Guys, I think we're going to wrap it up here. David, I hope you'll come in next week a little bit earlier. Keep in mind, and I'll share this with David as well as the rest of you, we have other shows that we do during the course of the week. Our next show will be Wednesday night, which is our college football huddle, college sports in general. But this year, time of year, we start obviously focusing almost exclusively on college football. We'll be back on at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, 8 a.m. Friday, we have the Are You Serious show with our co-host of Mad New Yorker, where we debate some of the topics of the day. We have the Sunday stream of consciousness. Fridays, we also have the Major League Baseball update at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is all Eastern time. We do the Let's Talk New York Sports with Dan Harris, who's over in the UK and runs Let's Talk Sports. And we'll also be getting back to our one-on-one with Keith Engel, our interview show here in the coming week. So I hope you'll join us for more good sports talk, fun sports talk, David, and the rest of you as well. David, if you go to TGI Sports Talk's Facebook page now, like and follow the show, you'll get the updates when all the shows are coming out. David does say the Rangers got a good record so far, but we have a problem with Houston on our backs. Pitching. Rangers need to go out and get some bullpen help still, and I think another starter. And the Rangers will be very tough if they can do just that. So, David, thanks so much for coming in today and starting, joining the show with us. And everybody who participated today, John Gonzalez, Drew, Benny, Rick, Anthony, Alan, while you were here, anybody I missed, I apologize. You can catch us every Sunday, 8:30 to 10:30, right here with the Sunday stream of consciousness. And I mentioned all the other shows. I hope the feed was good today, guys. I'll check it out. Oh,